Some of the best games came out during the 2000 era, like San Andreas, Resident Evil 4, Bioshock, Shenmue, The Warriors, Bully, Wii Sport. Let's all ignore that there's 3 Rockstar games on the list. Manhunt. Alright, 4. I'm gonna be honest, Rockstar had a grip on the 2000 era of games, and it was glorious time. However, we're here to talk about a different game. A game that isn't as popular as I thought it was, probably because it wasn't that great. A game that has an obscure name to gamers, because it was called Obscure 2 The Aftermath. But first I want to get a few things out of the way before we dive into the story, like characters, abilities, combat, and soundtrack. We'll start with the characters. You have Corey, May, Kenny, Amy, Professor James, Sven, Jun, Shannon, and Stan. Corey is an acrobat, May is a hacker, Kenny is a strunk boy, Amy is a decipherer, Professor James is an unplayable character, Sven is another strunk boy, Jun, no ability because her playable part is very short, so she's considered a non-playable character. Shannon, who has the ability to suck out any black spores you find that are blocking your way, and Stan, who is good at lockpicking. The combat is mostly close and medium range. Long range in combat basically does not exist in this game. Some of the weapons that it has, a baseball bat, a flash grenade, which they call a light grenade, a chainsaw, a crossbow, a mini SMG, Morgenstern bat, which is a bat that is covered with metal parts, dynamite, pistol, flare gun, flashball, shotgun, stun gun, golf club, Uber flashlight, and hockey stick. And when it comes to the soundtrack, it's very cheesy, very 2000-y, and honestly, it's not that terrible, but also it's not the greatest, so it's somewhere in the middle. At the start of the game, we see Stan driving his van and monologuing about Leafmore High and how the events turned out and where he ended up in his life. Then combined with a very cheesy music and very much 2000 feel, we transition into the first 2 characters of the game, Corey and May. A couple in university who are totally madly in love, dude. This brings us to the first setting of the game, the university. You'll see a wide cast of characters who are fighting, and in the background you'll hear very faint chatter among people, and in the halls you'll find small notes on boards asking for band members, reminding people to study and not have sex all the time, a guy selling his car that has over 300,000 miles on it, which I think is a fucking terrible deal because in the ad he says there's a large space in the back, so you know, wink wink, insinuating that you can have sex in his car, which I don't recommend. It really gives the feel that the school is lived in, that it's not just a place where the characters happen to be in. It feels like a dorm, and you'll see why I mentioned this point here. You head to Sven's room where you'll meet the cast of playable characters aside from Stan, who we met earlier in the cutscene. You take a quick sniff from a rose that became the new hype drug in Leafmore University and pass out. Corey and May wake up in what seems to be an island filled with mannequins covered in spikes. The entire feel of the game shifted to a much darker tone. Every hit you land on those mangled mannequins, you'll hear haunting screams. As you find more obstacles that block your way, you see a mysterious guy dragging a girl inside a sack. You chase after the figure and find out that he's gone, and you have no choice but to walk down a narrow hallway. As you go through, you start to hallucinate visions of May's twin sister June with half her body stuck in the wall, and your friend Sven with his arm torn off but being held in place by his other hand. You pass out once more and wake up with a gun and a shotgun. You move forward and you see a giant flower with a female's body devoured on one of its petals. 2 monsters break through each side of the wall. No matter what you do here, you will die.
What are you saying? May! No!
Corey wakes up from his nightmare in the bathroom stall, puking his guts out. He wanders the hall of his dorm with a spinning head, trying desperately to find May's whereabouts. Then he stumbles on an energy drink, which not only does it stop the spinning head, but also heals Corey. Isn't that wild? Get it? Because his name is Corey Wilde. The entire dark tone that you experience is fully gone, and even Corey forgets about it because the music starts kicking in, and oh boy, he is happy again. He finds May after doing some acrobatic shit across the building to get to the girls' dorm. But yeah, by the way, the boys' dorm and the girls' dorm is separated by a giant balcony that any horny dude would for sure make the jump. But honestly, there's a high chance someone might have died because it's a lawn. It's a balcony in between, like separating the boys' dorm and the girls' dorm, and there's a lawn drop on there's like a glass ceiling down there. I don't understand why they decided to make that design, but who am I to talk about? After you find May, the scene switches to Kenny and Amy, who are way too flirtatious to be hanging out just as friends. Way too flirty with each other. And I think Amy is not single. You find a way inside the building through the window on the second floor, which of course, as we talked about before, Kenny can move heavy stuff and Amy can figure out puzzles that my unborn niece could solve. You make your way out to the hallway, and this girl who has the worst posture I have ever seen on anyone. She tells us there's a gun in the safe where we need Amy's abilities to find the code. We get the gun, and the girl has now become a giant monster to which Amy calls a nightmare. And while she has a terrifying posture, I would not stoop so low to call someone a nightmare. Once the monster has been killed, you move on with your life like nothing happens. You find a glowing white box in a party room, and you'll find these across the game. Each one carries a special weapon in it, but the keys are tedious to find. However, while playing through this, I actually managed to end up with an extra key, and I made sure twice to not miss a box, so there has to be an extra key somewhere in the game. After solving a very simple puzzle, you meet a new character, but we've yet to get introduced to him. The game cuts to Corey and May arriving to the party. You will see these back and forth between characters throughout the game, so just a little heads up for you. You see these mangled and cut up bodies outside the building, and the door seems to be locked with a keypad, and this is where May comes in clutch with her hacking ability. Although the hacking part is kinda lame, because if you have knowledge about the old artists like Picasso, Leonardo, Donatello, and Raphael, or remember the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, then you'll know the codes without a problem. You also have infinite tries. You'll see by example how I purposely miss very simple puzzle because I have infinite tries. There's no downside to it at all. You can literally play it as a trial and error and still manage to hack something. However, there's not much for Corey and May, so all you have to do is just go meet Kenny and Amy. And this is where you'll get introduced to Professor James. He's a non-playable character as we stated before, but he's a very helpful one. He will give you a syringe which you can use to suck out venom out of the hearts of enemies you defeat and use that to create a medkit serum that'll heal you. After a little bit of tomfoolery with lights, you and the gang head out of the frat house and Corey sees his car being stolen, to which he loses his mind and chases after it.
Freaking car! Hey!
You'll never catch it. My car's not far from here. Come back, you retard.
May gets a call on a walkie-talkie, which I don't know why she has that, and holy shit, what kind of range this shit has. I suppose a phone weren't a thing in this universe? I don't know, honestly. But they communicate through walkie-talkies. Anyway, the group is separated again, and this time, Corey and Amy are together, and Sven and May are together. Before leaving, you see Kenny in pain and says he's headed to the hospital. You start playing Corey and Amy, and this part is very stupid considering that the entire time Corey is just continuously whines about his scar and how he's gonna kill whoever stole it. The section ends with Corey and Amy headed to the hospital, but not before meeting a deformed man who's dragging what seems to be a dead body in a sack. And then it cuts to Sven and May once Corey and Amy have reached the hospital.
My car. It's dead.
I'm worried about you, Corey.
I know. I'm sorry, honey. I've been an idiot.
Corey, it's June. I'm gonna look for her at the dorm with Sven.
Hey dude, good news. June's car is still here. As soon as we get the keys, I'll bring the twins back, I promise. And by the way, you'd better take care of my blonde girl, okay?
Don't worry. We're gonna stay here a while. It seems peaceful.
This is the only timed event where this doesn't actually impact the story at all. As you head to save June from the monsters breaking into her room, you'll see her health bar at the top. If you wait until the bar is gone, then you won't have to do a mini game where you play the cameraman to save June's life. So any speedrunner would just wait out the health bar so they don't have to do that ridiculous section. But for my playthrough and wanting all weapons, I had to save June where I see her get bodied by a berserker. That's the name of the fat monsters, by the way, called berserkers. I head downstairs and start operating the camera while playing with June, and each different camera has different static effect. June doesn't have any special abilities, so she dies no matter what. But the upside in return time is that you'll get a Morgenstern bat, which is basically just a spiked bat. After June gets the soul sucked out of her, and you can't do anything to stop it, you head out to the hospital. This time, you resume control of Corey and Amy. You progress through the level normally. You find some interesting reports about the flower and the spores and how it spreads, and apparently it's an STD. The new pandemic that's turning people into horribly deformed monsters are also making them super horny. Kenny and Shannon are also in the hospital seeking medicine to help Kenny's infection. Both him, Shannon, and Stan actually are infected from the first game, so they need daily doses to keep the spores from spreading. Not Shannon, because she is strong mentally and made the spores her bitch. Before transitioning back to Sven and May, you see Kenny transformed into a monster because his infection is finally taken over. You move back to Sven and May and enter the hospital and meet up with the rest of the gang and literally learn how to make dynamite. Right then and there, you literally create a bomb. After some acrobatic moves from Corey, you find yourself fighting against Kenny. The boss fights in this game are rather easy. Spam your weapons and you'll win. However, this is the only time where you can face an enemy who has projectile attacks. The rest of the enemies are melee combat only.
Finally, it looks like we're gonna have a little party.
After spamming my weapons at Kenny, he eventually shoved Corey into a rusty pipe and injured him Joel style. May sadly meets her fate here and joins her sister June in the afterlife. Kenny stomps her out, and not in the "daddy step on me please" way, but snuffs out her life. You find yourself, and Jesus Christ, did I write this? You find yourself in the second stage of fighting Kenny with Stan and Shannon. This time it's the same thing, spam your weapon till a cutscene happens. This is amazing. I wrote this like so long ago. The game cuts to the gang in Stan's van heading out of the city, but as the world is determined to keep the heroes down, a berserker pops up on the road and they swerve out of the way. This time, you play as Shannon and Stan. You go through the Fall Creek Dam, and only interesting thing here is the little box with a weapon in it. Now, here's something wild. I would like you to pay attention to the screen right now. Amy is somehow, magically, is now inside the dam. I'm gonna show a cutscene when Corey was crying over his girlfriend May and she's standing right there. And I'm gonna show a cutscene when they were in the van before the wreck and she's right there. And then I'm gonna show us another scene after the van is wrecked and she's right there. At no point does it actually showcase that Amy was kidnapped at all. 0 point. Nowhere. Does not exist. So I have no idea, genuinely no fucking clue how she got inside the dam when she was like a few seconds ago she was inside the car flipped upside down. I guess plot maybe? I don't know. At some point the game gets very lazy with its details. Like at the start of the game, like I said, the game feels very lived in and real. But halfway through, it gets super lazy and throws in random shit because it goes from the first Kenny fight to then the second Kenny fight, which he's already kidnapped Amy. We have no fucking idea how. It doesn't show Amy being kidnapped. It just simply happens. Also, the game showed that Kenny is strong enough to kill everyone, but chooses to use his projectiles instead. After reaching Amy with Shannon and Stan, you have to reach her again with Stan and Corey, but this time you have to bring wielding equipment to fix the elevator. This is where you have your second boss fight, and it's very simple. Again, you spam your guns until he staggers, then you damage him with a giant turbine. I will say the dialogue is hilarious because this is what Corey says immediately after Shannon kills Kenny.
I can't believe that he chose to become that thing.
You've just killed your brother, Shannon. This nightmare's changing all of us.
Oh, forgive me.
You continue to play with Corey and Shannon until you meet up with the gang again and switch to Amy and Sven. This is an important detail in the game. Kenny impregnated Amy while he was holding her. After solving a couple of simple puzzles, Amy and Sven reach a house in the woods and the deformed man attacks them. Sven tells Amy to run away while he takes care of him, and it cuts to Shannon and Stan.
I'll keep him off. Now, Amy!
Sven!
They go through the same area with different monsters to beat, but ultimately reach in the same house. After meeting up with the gang, it's important to switch between characters to solve simple puzzles around the house, and you'll find notes from Jedediah, the deformed guy. After solving the puzzles in the basement, you see Sven hanging from a meat hook and has his body chainsawed in half, just like in Corey's vision at the start of the game.
Oh my god!
you.
Jedediah runs into a secret tunnel and Shannon and Stan quickly chase after. Now this part confuses me because after running through the tunnel, you end up back in Leafmore High from the first game. After going through the school a bit, you go out and meet up with everyone outside. For this section, you have to use wrecking balls to destroy the walls so you can be back on the trail of Jedediah again. You enter a room and you find Jedediah hunched over a flower that's protecting him, and he calls the flower Dad. Everyone rejected Jedediah because he was mentally ill and deformed. His mother used to bring strangers into his room and they would make fun of him, and he promised that they'll never leave the house or laugh at him ever again. You learn the flower is actually the principal from the first game, and that he managed to live because Jedediah infused him with the flower. After this sad fight, Jedediah meets his demise after Corey verbally taunts him and his father.
Dad is dead. Won't make any more flowers, but you can still chop them up into firewood with that chainsaw of yours. Get a nice fire going. Get all warm and comfy while your daddy burns.
2 years of nightmares and traumas, and then this.
Corey and Stan head outside and credits start to roll. I'd like to say that's the end of the game, but no. After the credits, you see Professor James and guys in hazmat suits loading Amy into an ambulance while she's basically 9 months pregnant. I don't know. I don't know. Listen, it's a monster. It's a monster baby. Of course, it's gonna be born immediately. Turns out, Professor James was a villain all along. Who would have thought a bald guy would be so evil? Your weapon gets seized and Shannon and Stan go in an ambulance and Corey and Amy go into the other. As they're driving out of Leafmore, the spores have a different idea. A veil of spores drapes down on top of the car and flips it over. Don't ask me how that happens because the drivers have hazmat suits, so it can't control the driver's mind, and the spores are not made out of solid material, but you end up with Shannon and Stan again. You go through the same way as you did once with Corey while chasing his car. You end up in front of the frat house again and solve puzzles to find yourself in a new area related to the Brotherhood alone. You'll find one final box, and if you think it's a weapon, you're wrong. It's actually a video about characters from the first game. You head outside the Brotherhood frat house and find yourself on a trail to the stadium. You also find a duffel bag with all sorts of weapons. So if you didn't pick up most of the weapons in those boxes, it's okay, you'll find them here. So this is it, the final boss fight against Kenny. And so far, the only survivors from the 9 characters are Amy, Professor James, Shannon, Stan, Kenny, and Corey. But Corey decides to take his own life for some reason, just randomly. And even though he has Shannon and Stan to back him up against Kenny, he just logs out. The fight isn't that interesting either. It's the same thing as the second boss fight. Spam weapons till he staggers, then run over and pull a lever down. In the final scene, it shows Amy and Professor James in a helicopter, to which Amy's baby destroyed the helicopter, killing everyone at this point except Stan and Shannon. Which that scene ends with a makeout session between Shannon and Stan, right after she killed her brother and promised to kill his baby too. What the fuck? I actually wish this game had more replayability, but it doesn't. I wish I could tell you there's some secret weapons you can unlock, but no. I went to the wiki and it shows that there's supposed to be a flamethrower and a rod, but it doesn't exist. There's no reason to replay this game again unless you like cheesy music and dialogue. Do I recommend you playing this game? No, I don't. Not even as a meme. It's really not worth it. Do I still hold this game in high regards due to my memories? A little bit, actually. I still enjoy the cheesiness of it and everything. I do see that it's lazy now, but I suppose it has its special place in my heart. I remember I owned a small TV that I would carry around the house and plug it into different outlets and play my PlayStation 2 games because I wasn't really allowed to play on the big TV that much. And when I got a chance to play on the big TV, it just felt better. I think because of that, I hold a lot of games in high regards, purely because whenever I was scared, I would specifically go to a room where everyone in my family is sitting there, whether it's the living room or anything, and just find like a small corner with a plug near it and plug my TV there and just play while everyone is around. And I would remember specifically, because I was scared, I would play a lot of horror games, muted actually. I also played a lot of games muted because I didn't want to annoy my family. If you watched all the way through, I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. And make sure you check my link in the description. Thank you for bearing with me, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye-bye.